bookshelf we make, can we do the same with you? We
Sure.
have, we have
You
some
mean pictures of me?
you through the
She's
decade.
been waiting for this.
Oh, look at my 20s.
Wow.
That was how to succeed in business.
Yes, that's true, because I'm not tough all the time. I think I became tough because of things that have happened psychologically. I don't mean in any real detrimental way, but psychologically.
In 1960, Michele Lee was just 18 when Broadway discovered her. By 1979, she was television's most reliable star. But in 2025, she revealed something that shocked everyone.
We laughed every take. It was like, I think it was take 18.
During a podcast recording, she let slip a detail about her appearance that had been hidden for 40 years. Her co-stars Joan Van Ark and Donna Mills went silent. And when recent photos surfaced showing Lee at 83, the internet exploded. The truth was more surprising than anyone imagined.
Guess who I'm sitting next to?
Michele Lee, I knew her anywhere.
Did you know Michele Lee?
I did.
Michele Lee, who's one of my all-time favorite performers, and she knows that. And you play Eleanor in Fumbling Through the Pieces.
I do.
And I saw all of your episodes, and I loved it.
I'm fabulous.
You're fabulous in
No,
it.
and I know.
Do you agree that you're fabulous in it? Did
Yes.
you see it? Have you watched the episode?
Of course I have.
What'd you think?
I'm fabulous.
Michele Lee was born on June 24, 1942, but her path to stardom had already been paved before she took her first steps. Her father, Jack Dusick, was one of Hollywood's top makeup artists. He worked with the biggest stars of the Golden Age: Elizabeth Taylor, Marilyn Monroe, Grace Kelly. Michele spent her childhood in studio makeup chairs, quietly watching as these icons prepared to face the camera. By the time she turned 5, she had already met more celebrities than most people meet in a lifetime. It wasn't just luck. Jack was in high demand, always booked on the biggest productions. Michele was often on set with him, like a silent observer in Hollywood's inner sanctum. Their home in Los Angeles was modest, but the people who visited were legends. Michele wasn't just watching history, she was living inside it. But what looked glamorous on the surface came with intense pressure. Michele never had a normal childhood. She was being shaped for the spotlight from the very beginning. At 7, she was already performing in local shows and helping support her family during tough times. Her parents weren't just proud. They treated her talent like an investment. Dance classes at 4, singing lessons by 6, acting workshops at 8. Her days were packed. School until the afternoon, then rehearsals and gigs until late at night. Even weekends were for auditions and performances. Michele didn't know this wasn't normal. She thought every child had a schedule like hers. But while others her age were going to birthday parties, she was performing on stage. By 12, she was earning more than some grown adults. She wasn't just gifted. She was being groomed to succeed. Things only got more intense in high school. Michele went to Alexander Hamilton High between 1958 and 1960. That school, during those years, was something special. It produced future icons like Joel Siegel, Al Michaels, and Michelle Phillips. But even in that talented crowd, Michele stood out. At 16, she asked to audition for lead singer in the school band. She had no formal training in their style, but her audition was so powerful, she got the role instantly. Soon, the band was performing professionally around Los Angeles. Michele was pulling off a double life, maintaining a 3.8 GPA while singing 3 nights a week. She made about $200 per performance. That's around $2,000 in today's money, all before she turned 17. Then came her big break. In 1960, when she was just 18, Broadway legend David Merrick discovered her. But it wasn't as sudden as it seemed. Merrick had been watching her in secret for months. He'd heard about her from insiders and had been attending her shows without her knowing. By the time she auditioned for Vintage 60, Merrick had already decided to cast her. She still had 3 months of high school left, but that didn't stop him. He offered her $500 a week, equal to $5,000 today, and a cut of ticket sales. Michele accepted and finished high school through correspondence while rehearsing in New York. It was a dream contract for someone still in her teens. Her Broadway career had officially started, but her senior year never really happened. Then everything changed in 1970. Her father, Jack Dusick, died of a heart attack at 54 while working on the set of Love Story. He'd been feeling chest pains for months, but refused to stop working. He wanted that film to be his crowning achievement. Michele got the news while performing in Seesaw on Broadway. She was 27, but what the public didn't know was that Jack had been hiding financial struggles. He'd been helping relatives during hard times and left behind over $75,000 in debt. That's about $500,000 in today's money. Michele didn't run. She didn't hide. She worked hard. She took every job she could, often juggling multiple projects at once. Her drive became a way to honor him and to survive. That period would shape how she approached her entire career. Her momentum didn't stop. Just a year after her father's death, Michele landed the role of Rosemary in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. She was only 19, but held her own alongside Broadway veterans. The part showcased her talent as both an actress and a singer. She was so good that when the play became a movie in 1967, she was asked to reprise the role. That kind of stage-to-screen transition was rare and proved she had something special. Her name was now being mentioned alongside the biggest talents of the time. Around this time, Columbia Records came knocking. They didn't wait. After seeing her on stage, they rushed to sign her. This was no small label. They had Bob Dylan, Barbra Streisand, and Johnny Cash. But they made room for Michele. She recorded 2 albums in the 1960s and contributed to Broadway cast recordings. In a time when few performers could juggle stage and studio careers, Michele did both, and she made it look easy. Then came television. At 22, she became a regular on The Danny Kaye Show. This was one of the most watched variety shows of the time. Michele wasn't just a guest. She was a featured performer. She sang, danced, and did comedy sketches live on air. It introduced her to millions of homes across America. These appearances didn't just boost her fame. They trained her to adapt to different styles quickly. She mastered timing, live performance, and audience connection. These were tools she would use for the rest of her career. One of her most surprising roles almost didn't happen. The musical Bravo Giovanni had been considering a different rising star for the lead, a young Barbra Streisand. Streisand auditioned but was rejected by the director, who said she was too ugly for the part. That brutal dismissal opened the door for Michele.
Michele Lee is known to millions as Karen on Knots Landing. We know that. We've got to know her pretty well from that. But what we're learning about her is her big talent is actually Broadway, which is your passion.
She was only 19, but landed the role opposite Cesare Siepi, a renowned opera singer. Their chemistry worked. The show was a hit. And that one casting decision helped launch Michele to her next major success. By 1974, Michele was back on Broadway in Seesaw, and it became the peak of her theater career. Her role as Gittel Mosca earned her a Tony nomination and 2 other major awards. The production had very little money for promotion. No big ads, no TV commercials. The producers even brought the mayor of New York on stage once as a publicity stunt. But none of that mattered. Michele's performance was electric. Critics loved her. Audiences packed the theater. The show itself didn't recoup its costs, but Michele's name had never been more respected. When she left and her understudy took over, the magic faded. That role became the crown jewel in her stage career. Michele Lee's leap from Broadway to Hollywood in 1967 felt like a fairy tale, but behind the scenes, It was filled with pressure, risk, and rejection. At just 25 years old, she was cast in the film version of How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, a role she had already performed on stage. Yet she had to audition 3 times for the film, even though she was the original Rosemary Pilkington on Broadway. The producers weren't sure if a stage actress could handle the transition to film, but Lee proved them wrong. The film was shot on a modest $4 million budget and earned over $15 million worldwide. She held her own beside Robert Morse and Rudy Vallee, and became one of the youngest actresses of the time to successfully transition a Broadway role to the big screen. Just 2 years later, Dick Van Dyke saw her performance and personally asked for her to star alongside him in the comic. Lee, still new to Hollywood, agreed. But while Van Dyke earned $500,000, she received just $75,000, despite playing the female lead. The film was serious and dark, a big departure from Van Dyke's usual charm. Lee played his wife and had to age from 20 to 60 on screen, spending hours each day in makeup. She even performed her own stunts, including a dangerous stair fall. Critics praised her range, calling her a surprise talent. Still, the film earned just $2.3 million against a $3.8 million budget. Financially, it failed. But Lee walked away with a new label, Dramatic Actress. Then came The Love Bug in 1968, a Disney family film that turned into a global hit. Lee was hesitant to join at first. Playing a secretary didn't feel like a serious step in her career. But the film made $51.2 million in the US alone, becoming Disney's biggest live-action hit at the time. Her contract included just 0.5% of the profits, a small detail that ended up earning her over $250,000. She started with a $50,000 salary, but thanks to those tiny residuals, she walked away with 5 times that. Even so, she was only obligated to do promotions for the sequels, never the films themselves. To play the part, she had to learn how to drive a manual car, something she had never done before. The Beetle in the movie? Not one car, but 6 different ones disguised as Herbie. But success didn't shield her from heartbreak. In March 1974, Lee's mother, Sylvia, her manager, advisor, and closest confidant, died of a heart attack at just 58. Michele was shattered. Every decision in her career had gone through her mother. Without her, Lee felt frozen. She pulled out of a $2 million TV deal with CBS. She even turned down the lead in Chicago on Broadway, a role that would go to Gwen Verdon. For 18 months, she didn't act at all. She lived off her savings and the money from The Love Bug, choosing instead to stay home with her 8-year-old son, David. During that time, she lost an estimated $3.5 million in missed opportunities. At one point, she even considered retiring for good. She put her Beverly Hills house on the market. Only in late 1975 did she start accepting small TV roles again, quietly re-entering the industry, still grieving but ready to move forward. By the end of 1979, Lee made a decision that would define her entire television career. After a family vacation, she joined Knots Landing, a new CBS soap and a spin-off of Dallas. The timing was emotional. It had been 5 years since her mother's death, and she still hadn't fully recovered. This role felt like a fresh start. She was cast as Karen Fairgate, the moral center of a quiet suburban neighborhood. Creator David Jacobs saw her as the show's anchor, the one who voiced what the audience was thinking. The show premiered in December 1979, but it nearly didn't survive its first season. Ratings were low. CBS executives panicked. To save the show, they even considered bringing in Dallas stars like Larry Hagman for cameos. Producers met constantly, trying to find ways to boost viewership. The cast felt the pressure. Lee later said everyone was desperate to make the show work. It teetered on the edge for months, and then came Donna Mills. In September 1980, Mills joined the show as Abby, a scheming, ambitious, and unapologetically selfish character. She was the complete opposite of Lee's Karen. That contrast lit a fire under the series. Suddenly, viewers were hooked. Abby stirred up scandal after scandal, and Karen tried to keep her world from falling apart. Ratings soared. Mills won 3 awards for playing the villain. Audiences couldn't get enough of the battle between good and evil. And it turned Knots Landing into a hit that ran for 14 seasons. And through it all, Michele Lee never missed a single episode. From the first one in 1979 to the final one in 1993, she was there, 344 episodes in total. No other actress in a 1-hour primetime American drama had ever done that before.
I have to be tough sometimes, or seem tough. There's a part of me that is very vulnerable, hence the tough. Think about that, folks.
She even started directing episodes in 1989, managing both sides of the camera. The record stood until 2008. Her character, Karen, went through everything: family problems, addiction, kidnapping, and still held the community together. She became one of the most enduring figures in TV history. Her work didn't go unnoticed. In 1982, she was nominated for an Emmy. It marked her arrival as not just a star, but a respected actress in dramatic television. She went on to win 3 Soap Opera Digest Awards for Best Actress and another for Favorite Super Couple with Kevin Dobson. Michele Lee's life behind the scenes was nothing like the calm, maternal character she played on Knots Landing. She married actor James Farentino in 1966 when she was just 24. They had met 3 years earlier during a Broadway production, and at the time, he was still dating her friend. Farentino had just divorced actress Elizabeth Ashley, and soon after, he and Lee began a relationship. Because of their different religions, she was Jewish, he was Catholic, they had a civil ceremony. In 1969, they had a son named David. But as Lee's career skyrocketed, their marriage started to crumble. Knots Landing made her a household name, but that success came at a cost. Farentino was dealing with his own career pressures and later, some serious troubles. In 1991, he was arrested for cocaine possession. 2 years later, he faced stalking charges involving Tina Sinatra. Their marriage had already been strained for years by then. Lee called their 15-year relationship stormy and rocky. The show that made her famous was also tearing her personal life apart. By 1981, they'd finally separated. It was during the height of Lee's fame. While the world saw her as the unshakable Karen McKenzie, Lee was falling apart off-screen. The couple had already been living apart for 2 years before the split became public. And when her character on the show lost her husband, Lee used her real grief to bring that performance to life. She later admitted she didn't take off her wedding ring for 3 months after the separation. She wasn't ready to face the world alone, but she still had to keep working, still had to show up on set every day, while trying to protect her 12-year-old son from the chaos at home. Their divorce was finalized on April 19th, 1983. That made 17 years together, counting from when they first met. By Hollywood standards, the divorce was quiet and civil. Lee didn't drag it out. She even fired her lawyer when they pushed her to be aggressive. She said Farentino wouldn't try to hurt her financially or emotionally, and she was right. Still, the court had to sort out their properties, support payments, and who would take care of David. David was 13. Unlike many Hollywood custody battles, this one stayed respectful. Lee got primary custody, but Farentino had regular visitation. Both made sure their schedules worked around David's needs. Lee later said that becoming a mother changed her whole approach to her career. She wouldn't take jobs if she couldn't bring her son. And in a rare twist, the co-parenting actually worked. Years later, all three appeared together in a 1992 television movie. David played a victim in the film, opposite both his parents. That kind of family dynamic, especially after a divorce, was almost unheard of in Hollywood. But for them, it became the new normal. Then something surprising happened. Lee found love again. In 1987, she married Fred A. Rappaport, a writer and producer. He wasn't just another Hollywood type, he was a steady force. And unlike many second husbands, Rappaport never tried to erase her past. In fact, he embraced it. Lee said he fully accepted her friendship with Ferrantino. They built an extended family that included shared dinners and even holidays with her ex-husband and his later wife. That kind of openness gave Lee the security she needed. By 2025, she and Rappaport had been married 37 years. He became a stepfather to David and supported her through every chapter. In 1996, Lee created a film that broke new ground. Color Me Perfect wasn't just another TV drama. It was a bold story about an intellectually disabled woman who becomes a genius through experimental treatment. Lee didn't just star in it. She wrote, produced, and directed it. No woman had ever done that before on cable television. She even turned down her Knots Landing salary to focus on this one project. Critics praised the way she portrayed the transformation. It felt natural, emotional, and thought-provoking. Some wondered why society tries to fix people with disabilities instead of accepting them. The film sparked that conversation. It scored 5.7 to 10 on IMDb, but more importantly, it was named the best cable movie of the year. Lee didn't do it for money. She did it because the story mattered. That same sense of purpose led her to co-found the Entertainment Industries Council in the early 1980s. The goal? To create a drug-free generation. This wasn't just a slogan. Lee gave testimony before Congress. She spoke as both a public figure and a mother. She called out her own industry for glamorizing drug use. The EIC worked directly with writers and producers to change how addiction was shown on screen. It didn't just raise awareness, it changed how Hollywood told its stories. Lee wasn't just acting anymore. She was shaping the culture behind the scenes. 2 years after Color Me Perfect, Lee took on another bold role. In 1998, she played author Jacqueline Susan in Scandalous Me. The film explored the wild, controversial life of the woman who wrote Valley of the Dolls. Lee nailed the part. One scene in particular stood out. As Susan, she said, "The rich and powerful women in my book are not happy. I make them miserable. I make them suffer so my readers can go back to their tract houses, screaming kids and Volkswagens, and feel lucky." That line hit hard. It showed how Susan understood her audience and why her books were so popular. Lee's performance earned praise, and the film got 4 nominations. But Lee didn't stop there. She wanted control. Real control.
I agree. She's always been in great shape. I've been rounder at times, but I do exercise. I stretch every day. I think if you had to pick one, that's, as you're getting older, that's probably the best. Not that you should do just that one.
So she launched Michele Lee Productions in the 1990s. It gave her full creative freedom, something few actors, especially women, had at the time. The office was set up in Los Angeles, and the mission was simple: tell stories that mattered. Her first success? Color Me Perfect. But the company also developed scripts on addiction, mental health, and women's rights. Even after her long Knots Landing run ended in 1993, she refused to leave quietly. She even offered to work without pay, so the show wouldn't be canceled. That same drive carried over into her production work. She didn't just focus on TV either. She joined the Artists Committee for the Kennedy Center. That meant working with the biggest cultural institution in America. She attended events at the White House. She helped shape policies for the performing arts. And she did it not just as a celebrity, but as an advocate. Her work there lined up with everything else she believed in: supporting young talent, fighting for social change, and preserving the arts for future generations. When Michele Lee returned to Broadway in The Tale of the Allergist's Wife, it shocked almost everyone. She was best known as a TV actress, the star of Knots Landing, not someone you'd expect to see sharing the stage with Broadway legends like Linda Lavin and Tony Roberts. But when the play opened on November 2nd in 2000 at the Ethel Barrymore Theatre, Lee stunned critics and audiences alike. Her role as the mysterious Lee Green brought both humor and depth. She was hilarious, unpredictable, and incredibly human. That performance earned her a Tony nomination for Best Featured Actress in a Play, and the show itself became a hit, running for 777 performances, one of the longest runs of the decade. Years later, when the cast reunited for a benefit reading in 2019, Lee slipped right back into the role as if no time had passed. Her performance had left a permanent mark. Then came 2004, and another surprise. Michele Lee showed up in Along Came Polly, a romantic comedy starring Ben Stiller and Jennifer Aniston. Nobody expected her to take on a big Hollywood comedy, especially playing Stiller's mother, Vivian Pfeffer. But once again, she proved how flexible she was. Despite the role being small, she stood out. The movie made over $178 million globally on a $42 million budget. And the director, John Hamburg, had chosen Lee for a reason. He knew she could bring weight to the comedy. She blended effortlessly with the rest of the cast, including Philip Seymour Hoffman and Alec Baldwin. At age 62, it was her first big movie in decades, and she walked right into it with ease, showing she still had perfect timing and screen presence. Just when people thought they had her figured out, Lee did something totally unexpected. In 2013, she entered the world of web series, a space dominated by younger actors and digital creators. She made a guest appearance in Fumbling Through the Pieces, and not only impressed, but won the Indie Series Award for Best Guest Appearance in a Comedy. She was 71. The ceremony, streamed live around the world, was a milestone for both the show and Lee herself. She had just beaten actors like Anthony Anderson and John Cryer. This wasn't a nostalgia act. This was a veteran performer adapting to a changing world and winning. Her involvement helped legitimize online content for older actors and signaled that the future of acting was already here. Then, in 2015, she took it even further. At 73, she joined the cast of Wicked on Broadway, playing the powerful and sinister Madame Morrible. It was a physically demanding role, with costumes that weighed over 20 pounds and required hours of makeup. Most actresses in that part came from operatic or classical backgrounds, but Lee brought her own unique strength to the character. She held her own on one of the biggest stages in the world, the Gershwin Theater, and delivered night after night. Her run from 2015 to 2016 coincided with some of the show's biggest box office numbers. She wasn't just staying relevant, she was still leading. In 2025, she did something completely different, but just as powerful. Michele Lee reunited with her Knots Landing co-stars Joan Van Ark and Donna Mills for a podcast called We're Not Done Yet. Fans had waited decades to hear these three women together again. The podcast wasn't just about reliving memories. It was raw, honest, and often emotional. They talked about the show, sure, but also about insecurities, conflicts, and moments they had never shared publicly. With a 4.8 rating from 185 Apple Podcast reviews, it became a hit. And the timing couldn't have been better. Knots Landing had just been re-released on streaming platforms, attracting new generations of fans. Suddenly, these women were back in the spotlight, but in a modern, intimate way. The surprises didn't stop there. On April 29, 2025, Lee made a revelation that caught everyone off guard. In one of the podcast episodes, she spoke openly about plastic surgery, something Hollywood stars almost never admit. She said that back in her 40s, during Knots Landing, she had a facelift. It was subtle, she explained, but it lasted. And more importantly, she hadn't done anything since. That one statement sparked a major conversation. Lee wasn't just confessing a beauty secret, she was challenging an entire industry's silence. Her belief was simple. If you're going to do something, do it early and subtly. Don't wait until your skin is no longer as pliable. Her honesty resonated deeply, especially with women who had been feeling the same pressures for years. Suddenly, the podcast wasn't just entertainment. It was a safe space where beauty, age, and reality could all be discussed without shame. But not all the headlines that year belonged to the American Michele Lee. On May 29, 2025, a different Michele Lee, an Australian playwright of Hmong descent, won the Griffin Award for her play Snappy. The award came with a $17,700 commission and was chosen from 136 entries. Her story was bold and deeply personal. It followed B, a woman facing a midlife crisis who meets a younger man in a bar. Buy me a drink, B says, and the stranger does. The play explored aging, desire, and female agency in ways rarely seen on stage. Lee had already won the Queensland Premier's Drama Award and the Victorian Premier's Literary Award. But this win cemented her place as a voice for women who didn't fit into traditional roles or stories. It also proved that the name Michele Lee belonged not just to a television icon, but to a new generation of creators breaking barriers in their own way.